There are people who say this universe is dead, and fans should just move on. But that's a ridiculous statement, because with the multiverse, no story or timeline is ever truly dead. Just look at Marvel. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are canon to the MCU now, and the entire OG X-Men cast is coming back in Avengers Doomsday. So I have to ask,
what the fuck are we doing out here? I asked you, what in the fuck are we doing here? Hell, I don't know.
This is why so-called real DC fans keep screaming at Snyder fans to move on. They are terrified, because any demand for the Snyderverse directly threatens what the studio is currently doing with DC. And here's the thing, Paramount are circling Warner Brothers like a predator stalking its prey. And when new management takes over, two things happen. They shake things up, and they lean on nostalgia to guarantee returns. When Disney bought Lucasfilm, they brought back Han, Luke, and Leia. When Skydance merged with Paramount, they brought back Michael Bay for the Transformers franchise. So riddle me this, what do you think Paramount is going to do if they buy Warner Brothers and DC? One of the biggest reasons that the Snyderverse will return is because DC has been, and still is, a mess. If Gunn's DCU was really thriving, there wouldn't even be a conversation. There isn't any real conversation surrounding the DCU, except terrible fan castings.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Snyder left DC 9 years ago. Since then, WB shifted focus to smaller characters that nobody asked for. Shazam, Birds of Prey, Black Adam, Blue Beetle. Every single one of them bombed at the box office. Meanwhile, Superman and Batman, the actual faces of DC, vanished for several years. And behind the scenes, it was chaos. The Flash was supposed to release in 2018, but it was stuck in development hell for half a decade. While Cyborg, Green Lantern, and Ben Affleck's Batman movie were all cancelled. And you had a revolving door of execs like Kevin Sujihara, Toby Emmerich, Walter Hamada, Jason Kilar, and Ann Sarnoff. This meant that DC was constantly pulled in different directions. There was no consistency, no vision, or long-term planning. Now fast forward to today, and history is repeating itself. Gunn's DCU already looks shaky. It launched with Creatures Commandos, a show that nobody watched. Peacemaker Season 2, a show that couldn't even make Nielsen's top 10 on the streaming charts. And the big one, Superman 2025. WB bet everything on it. It had more marketing than Man of Steel and endless media hype. And ultimately, it underperformed and made less than Man of Steel. And the thing is, David Zaslav doesn't care.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
He isn't thinking long-term. His goal has always been to sell the company. And in the meantime, he's been gutting WB, laying off thousands of employees, and writing off completed movies as tax write-offs, while doubling down on safe IPs like Lord of the Rings, multiple Game of Thrones spin-offs, a Harry Potter reboot, and yet another DC reboot. This is the context that Paramount's owner, Larry Ellison, is going to walk into if he buys Warner Brothers. And if you don't know Ellison, here's what you need to know about him. The dude is ruthless. He cancelled The Late Show days after Stephen Colbert criticized Paramount. He even shuttered his own daughter's studio because it wasn't delivering financially. Oops. The man doesn't have time for bullshit. So if Gunn's DCU doesn't explode financially in the next 2 years, he's gone. And what happens after that? Well, we've already seen how Paramount and the Ellisons deal with struggling franchises. They're bringing back Michael Bay to the Transformers franchise. So they would definitely look to the era of DC movies where they were making money. And there just so happens to be a fandom that refuses to let that fact be forgotten. If Paramount restored the Snyderverse, there's no question that the Snyder fandom played a huge role in making that happen. For years, Snyder fans have been poking holes into the fake narrative that WB and DC have been running. We've shown that there's real organic demand for the Snyderverse, so much so that the studio actively tried to fight it. That's why they funded so many hit pieces and pushed a bot smear campaign. Because after the release of the Snyder Cut, WB felt threatened. For the first time, Snyder fans weren't just part of the conversation. We were controlling the narrative. Honestly, can you blame them for being afraid when you think about what this fandom accomplished?
No, he's got a point.
This fandom raised over $1 million for charity. The fandom paid for billboards and made release the Snyder Cut trend worldwide. Not for days, or weeks, or months, but for years. And against all the odds, we actually won. The Snyder Cut was released. But the fans didn't just stop there. We wanted everything.
You better lawyer up, asshole, because I'm not coming back for 30%. I'm coming back for everything.
And Warner Bros. hated this. They didn't embrace this victory, they actively sabotaged it. First came the spin, articles calling the Snyder Cut a cul-de-sac, all designed to kill the hype before it ever came out. Then the hit pieces. Fans who just wanted to see a director's vision were suddenly painted as extremists. And do you guys remember the bot smear campaign? That was no accident. But it goes deeper than that. Somehow, the trailers leaked. Not once, but twice. And when people logged onto HBO Max to watch Tom and Jerry, they were greeted with the Snyder Cut. They actually leaked their own movie on their own platform.
No way! Say you swear to God! Say you swear to God!
A multi-billion-dollar corporation was sabotaging their own product to beef with their own fans. The sabotage didn't stop there. Promotion for the Snyder Cut was cut off in the US. WB and their subsidiaries were put on a gag order. So the only marketing came from HBO Max and the fans themselves. Even the DVD release was botched. The Snyder Cut wasn't officially released on DVD in the US until 2 years later, under new ownership. And even then, WB buried it. The official trailer advertising the DVD release is still unlisted on YouTube till this day.
Son of a...
And yet, despite every effort to erase it, the Snyder Cut thrived. The Batman is the only other DVD home release that made more than the Snyder Cut, and the Batman barely beat it. Overseas, the Snyder Cut broke records. On Book My Show in India, on Crave in Canada, on Binge in Australia, and the list goes on. Globally, it was the most talked about movie on Twitter in 2021, even more than Spider-Man No Way Home.
Huh?
So why did WB fight this hard to bury this movie and its fandom? The answer is pretty simple, because it proved them wrong. It showed that their half-baked plans simply wasn't what people wanted. The audience wanted Snyder's vision. There were over 1 million tweets asking for the Snyderverse to be restored a week after the release of the Snyder Cut. And this is exactly why the studio and so-called real DC fans hate this fandom. We refuse to go away. Even when the studio declares it's over, we keep the conversation alive. Just take a look at Lucasfilm. If you've learned anything from Star Wars, it's this. You do not go to war with your own fans. The people who actually buy your tickets and merch. Sure, you pick up new fans who hate what your old fans stood for. But those people don't really care about the IP. They just hate your existing fan community. That fracture destroyed the Star Wars fan base. And interest in that franchise has been on the decline ever since. And we're seeing the exact same thing with DC and the new Superman movie. So many people went into the movie just to spite Snyder fans. Just to say, see, we don't need Snyder. And then they walked out disappointed. And this brings us to today. Sure, DC got people to watch Superman because of the massive marketing machine that they had. And sure, some people showed up to stick it to Snyder fans. But that audience didn't last. It's already disappearing. Just look at Peacemaker's viewership numbers. It's pathetic. People are already tapping out of this universe. And this is creating the perfect storm. Snyder fans have already done the impossible once. Why would anyone believe that we can't do it again? At the end of the day, the entire industry is pointing in one direction right now. Nostalgia.
Remember Chewbacca again? Oh, I love to remember Chewbacca. Remember?
Forget Paramount for a second. Even if nothing changes, Snyder's DC cast will almost certainly return in some sort of crisis-style multiverse event in about 5 or 10 years from now. That is inevitable. DC will be foolish not to cash into their own multiverse event. It's free money. But what if it's not just the cast? What if it's the Snyderverse itself? And here's why it's more possible than you think.
Well, we're waiting.
David Zasla's plan was never to build a thriving DCU. His goal from day one was to sell the company. Everything he's done, from gutting the company, to splitting the divisions, to focusing on legacy IP, it's all been about making WB attractive to investors. And that meant that sooner or later, new ownership was always coming in. Whether it's Comcast, or Paramount, or even Apple, take your pick. And that's where performance matters. The severity of changes made at DC will depend on how DC performs. And right now, DC is underperforming across the board. Peacemaker Season 2 and Creatures Commandos were flops. The viewership numbers are embarrassingly low, so whoever buys DC will have no choice but to make massive changes. Gunn could very well be fired. Now, does that automatically mean that Snyder comes back? No. They could just as easily hire J.J. Abrams to run DC.
Ooh, one down. I know somebody who won't be having any...
I'm starting to feel funny.
Well, I feel fine. I guess I'm gonna...
But if it's Paramount specifically who buys WB, then Snyder's return goes from possible to very likely. Here's why. Paramount just signed a huge deal with the UFC to broadcast their events. And Snyder's next film is The Last Photograph. But after that, he's making a UFC movie called The Brawler. And guess who's potentially going to distribute it? Paramount! If The Brawler is a box office hit, then Snyder suddenly gains leverage with the very same studio who will own DC. And when that happens, he's going to get the keys to the kingdom. His DC Odyssey will be completed. All paths lead back to Snyder. WB has resisted for nearly a decade, but destiny has a funny way of catching up. I know it's hard to keep hoping after years of disappointment. Twice before, new owners came in, and each time the Snyderverse seemed further away than ever. That was because Snyder became the scapegoat for every failure at DC. Every flop was his fault, because he ruined the brand. But also, every success was in spite of him. He was their boogeyman. And the Access media, as well as the Snyder-hating crowd, played along. But that excuse doesn't work anymore. Gunn's DCU has stripped every last Snyder influence. For the first time in years, DC have nowhere to hide. If their universe fails, it's on them. That means, for the first time, Snyder won't be seen as the problem, but actually the solution.
Vindication!
This opens the door for a new narrative. The old narratives don't work anymore. Fans just need to keep holding DC accountable to their lies, their spin, and their moving goalposts. Because this is a moment where hope is finally real. And here's the truth. This isn't just about one director. It's about finishing a story that is worth fighting for. And I'm not talking about the movies. The real story here is the fans. A small group of people who fought against incompetent executives, smear campaigns, sabotage, and corporate indifference, and somehow won. That is a story worth telling. That is a victory worth having. The Snyderverse will return. And when it does, history will remember those who made it possible.